All right, it's not the coffee pot that you're hearing, Stu. It's happening right here.
Get out of here.
We go
It's
back.
ridiculous.
Look, Nick and Mike go back and forth.
It's so over the top. Mike's a wild guy. His rankings are just out of control. We're going to get into all those.
Yep.
The top 20 Saints for the 2023 season. We're going to run down the list. One of us is living in reality. The other one, I don't know what he's doing. But we're coming to you from PJ's from Maple Street. And we are not in the Better Call BADEAUX podcast studio, but they are one of our valued sponsors. So while you're out and about, make sure you stop by a PJ's location. They are all over the city. They got the best coffee in the city, so make sure you check them out. And if you need legal help with any of the following: car wrecks, offshore injuries, 18-wheeler collisions, Maritime Jones Act, hurricanes, storm claims, you better call BADEAUX at 504-323-7777 or 985-303-7777 for your free consultation and case review. And make sure you check out Ideal Market. They're home of the freshest produce in the city. They have the best quality food products, best prices, home of the largest variety of Hispanic foods and international foods you will find in the state, and a hot deli that surpasses many others in the area, and restaurants in their flavor of authentic Hispanic dishes. And Hardhide Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey is an 86 proof blend of aged wheat bourbon, American light whiskey, and fresh Ponchatoula strawberries. Blended in New Orleans, it is not for the thin skin. Look for it in your favorite stores, bars, and restaurants. And while you're out and about, check out Firehouse Subs, Veteran Boulevard location. Great people doing great stuff for the community. All right, let's get into the show.
Welcome back out to the PJ's location on Maple Street. We like being here. It's a pretty cool setup.
Yeah, did you know that PJ's stands for Phyllis Jordan? Did you know Phyllis Jordan? Yeah,
I learned that in this PJ's
she apparently
not too long ago.
Apparently still lives in the neighborhood too and comes in. So yeah.
Well, come on down next time.
Meet Phyllis. Meet Phyllis.
I know.
Yeah.
Love that. But no, we are presented by PJ's Coffee. We love being here. We hope you guys get your coffee from here. We're going to do something a little different. We're not going full game show host or anything like that. We are going top 20 Saints players, but here are some of the things about this. It's current Saints players, not based on what they've done in the past. It's based on 2023 season coming up, and we're going to start from 20 and work back. Who wants to go first?
Mike can go first.
I get to go first?
You can go first on every single one of these.
At
great,
20.
Great, and then Nick will put me in my place. Here's the problem. I don't have any conviction on any name on my list anywhere except for like 4 spots. And this is the toughest part. I feel really good about my top 11.
Okay.
And then the next like 4 or 5 names belong in a top 20 somewhere. These ones are all qualifiers.
I felt the same way. It was really tough to rank them, but we got Pat Sajak here to kind of play moderator and let us know when we're out of pocket.
It is interesting though. So I have seen their list. They have not seen each other's lists. They're very different, which you guys both said, oh, well, I don't know how we're going to do the show because we're probably going to have the same guys. They don't. And they don't have them at the same numbers either. They have a lot of the same names, but where they rank. And I've got a few questions for both of them about this. So let's go ahead and start with Mike
This is big enough deal that we're doing it over 3 episodes.
Yep.
Over 3 episodes. So
20,
we start.
20 players on the roster currently based on what they'll do this season.
Number 20, and this will give you a little hint of what my tiebreaker was on the whole list. If you've done it before, I give you a little extra credit. So Bradley Roby snuck into my list at number 20, which was tough for me because we're just a year removed from him competing and kind of losing his job to Paulson Adebo on the outside. And then Paulson Adebo could be losing his job to Alontae Taylor. So age 31, Bradley Roby is not in the prime of his career anymore. But I like the way he's embracing the nickel role, which they need now. I think he can make it his own. He played his best football when he was showing his versatility, playing in the nickel a lot. Early in his career with the Denver Broncos, 4 times he had double-digit pass defenses, 8 forced fumbles in his first 6 seasons, played on a Super Bowl team in Denver, and I think he's kind of going back to his roots under his former coach, Joe Woods. I like that he's been there, he's done it, former first-round pick, and I think he's going to own that nickel role and have a good, solid season for them, but he's 20th for a reason.
Not to give away Mike's list, but the reason why that was surprising for me is because you don't have Paulson Adebo in your top 20.
If I could have gotten away with it, I would have done Roby/Adebo at 20. But I think Roby's going to play a lot more snaps than Adebo this year. I really do. The nickel plays 75, 80% of the snaps, maybe more for the Saints. And I think Adebo only gets on the field if there's an injury.
I think training camp will allow us to answer that question a little bit too. But all right, we started 20. Bradley Roby. Nick?
Yeah, I went Brian Bresee, and I don't have a lot of reason for it. Just I think he's going to have a good season. I think he's going to have a net positive impact on the defense. I don't think they had that interior push last year. I think his presence makes Cam Jordan better. I think it makes Carl Granderson better. And I think that he's going to be a good NFL player. I liked his college tape. I think that his best football is ahead of him. I thought there was a lot of stuff working against him in college that he's going to be on the right side of now. I think we're going to see a big build going forward. And I'm expecting him to get 3.5 sacks this year, and I think that's going to be a major difference on the defense.
And again, I don't want to give away the list, but it's surprising at 20 just how hard this decision came by. You don't even have Bradley Roby on your list, and you don't have Brian Bresee on your list.
Well, I mean, that's one of the big problems with a list like this. I went with a 10th-year veteran. You went with a rookie. What have you done? What are you about to do? That is the toughest thing with lists like this.
Would you have snuck in Bresee at 20?
I think it's hard. I think it's hard to put a rookie who we haven't seen before, and also when it comes to what his role is going to be, I don't know if Bresee's going to play more than 30 snaps a game as a rookie, but hopefully he's in the top 10 on this list next year. That'd be a successful rookie season.
The Saints would want him to.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Play that many snaps.
Yeah. Look, I think at 30 snaps a game, though, he has such a big impact. And it's possible that Roby's not playing that much. If Adebo's on the field, Roby might not play. I left both those corners off my list. I have 2 on and 2 off. So I don't know. It got tough towards the bottom. And it's kind of making a projection. But I think they got the scouting right on this one, and I think he's going to be a good player.
I'm leaning toward Brian Bresee only because we haven't had a fun defensive lineman who comes out onto the field and you are just eyeing them the whole game. It's been a while. It's been since Cam Jordan's first stepped on the field. Sheldon Rankins, we miss having him here, but I want somebody to come in on the defensive line, like a Brian Bresee, and every play you're like, where's he at? Is he blowing this play up? That's I think why the Saints went and got him. We'll see if it translates to the field, but that is the big question. Can he put his money where his mouth is?
Yeah, if I was only allowed to keep one of these 2 players, I'd keep Bresee.
Look, the other thing I like too, I was talking to Brian the other day, and he thinks Hercules is a terrible movie, so that makes me like him even more. So
what does that say about Foster? Yikes. Neither on their top 20. No, that's not why.
Number 19, I went with the danger of anointing someone too soon based on their draft status, Cesar Ruiz. I think if he had not suffered the Liz Frank injury late in the season, I don't know where he is on Nick's list, if he's on Nick's list at all, but I think he would have been higher on this list. I think he had really started to establish himself last year. The injury makes me, I don't know, are we back to square one where he's unproven again? Can he get right back to when he had really finally started to find it last year? But the health is going to wipe out yet another offseason. That was a big problem for him. I think the reason it took him 3 years to finally establish himself, he was 20 when they drafted him. He was drafted in the COVID offseason where he had no offseason. It took a long time for him. But the thing about him last year, according to Nick Underhill statistics, which are the ones I swear by, only 16 pressures allowed last year, which was less than half of what he had done in the previous season. And we talked to a friend of the show, offensive line expert Brandon Thorne, who said he watches everyone in the league. He said he was legitimate top 10 right guard, if not higher last year. And it's because he has special traits. He has power that his highlights are special highlights. He's not just a guy. When he hits it, it's special. Unfortunately, it's been a small sample size when he's hit it in his career, which is why he's 19th instead of 12, 13, 14.
I agree with him at 19 because he made that step forward, and if he just continues on that upward trajectory, he's going to be a solid guy they can lean on the offensive line. 19 for you.
Well, I'll reveal 18 before 19, and you just nailed it, so we don't need to belabor the point. I got Ruiz at 18. At 19, I put JT Gray, all-pro special teamer. I like what he's doing at safety, though, throughout his career. You see him developing more and more and more. And when guys weren't out there last week at OTAs, he was actually the starting safety with the first team, and he got good snaps there last year. I think he's just becoming a better football player overall, and his work as a gunner kind of covers up some of the stuff for the punters. He made Morstead look better than he was during Morstead's injured season, so he's just someone that I think deserves some recognition for what he's been able to do.
Why do you think he doesn't get so much recognition? Wasn't he a Pro Bowl, two-time
Pro
Bowler?
It's weighing what that's worth. It's weighing what that is worth. He is one of the best at what he does in the league. You know, the Hall of Fame is going to have a very interesting decision when Devin Hester goes up for Hall of Famer. It's like,
Well, Matthew Slater.
yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, I do give a lot of credit. I pulled my phone out. We have the cards because we're such a professional, prepared show. But just to show the Brooke and Prove the two names that just missed my list: Paulson Adebo, JT Gray. So I thought of it for the same reason. He just missed my list because obviously there's only so many snaps where you can affect the game, but it's valuable. He would have made my top 25.
I think it's probably overlooked by people that kind of watch the game a little bit more casually. The impact on special teams. It's that hidden yardage that Sean Payton talked about forever. And if you can eliminate returns, you can have someone that's not punting great. Again, like Morstead did that whole year he was injured, but like his punting averages were still good.
They set the NFL record.
Because their gunner play was just elite, and there just wasn't the ability to return. So they are significantly important.
The team made a very concerted effort around 2017, 2018. Chris Banjo and I'm going to forget a bunch of names, but certainly JT Gray and guys they drafted, veterans they signed. Justin Hardy was one of the best we've seen come through here. They decided that especially when Drew Brees wasn't lighting up the scoreboard anymore, where are all the different ways we can win football games? And that's been a really big push for them in recent years. So Ruiz, now you're starting number 18. Anything else you want to say about Ruiz, or should I go to my number 18?
No, you can go ahead.
All right. Now this is where it gets really tough. I went for a young guy who we think is going to do it. But Alontae Taylor, you can make a case for him being very high on this list because of what we think he's going to do, but you can make a case for having him off the list entirely because he hasn't quite done it yet. But that stretch last year when he comes off injured reserve and they put him right into the fire against DeAndre Hopkins and he delivers in that game, and that kicks off a 8-game stretch with 41 tackles and 10 pass defenses in 8 games. We saw it in that stretch. It's an 8-game stretch. If he delivers on that, delivers on the potential of a second-round draft pick, it's going to be a lot higher than 18th next year. It's just tough for how high does potential get you on a list like this? I'll have the same conversation in a minute at number 17. Oh, and you did, so I have to go to my 17 now? Let's do it. Because you said Ruiz at 18 and then Rashid Shaheed at 17. You know, in some ways I wanted to put Taylor higher. He was a second-round pick. Shaheed was the undrafted guy. But Rashid Shaheed, for me, he's the one who gets me more excited about this team. Like, I think more highly of this team because of how he can affect it in the kickoff return game. He can change a game in one play. He can change a game in one play with a catch or with an end-around run, which we saw multiple times last year. He only had 28 catches last year for 488 yards and 2 touchdowns. But over the last 6 games, 22 catches for 377 yards. That last 6 games, that's on pace for a 1,000-yard season. He felt like a bit player, but over the last 6 games, he was on pace for a 1,000-yard season. And we saw it even in the cold weather at Cleveland. He wasn't just a big play guy. He was a go-to guy in tough conditions.
Did you find yourself wanting to put him higher or lower?
I need a little bit more prove it than a guy who has 28 career catches and was undrafted sometimes to be higher than 17th. I think that's fair for him. But his potential gets me a lot more excited than some guys I have higher on the list.
So just to clarify, Mike's got Bradley Roby, Cesar Ruiz, Alontae Taylor, Rashid Shaheed. We're going to hear another name on Nick's list.
I got Alontae here, and I think that he can be even better than this. And the thing that I like most about his sit down with us, people that read our film studies last year, they saw me like belabor the point about him just being out of control on some of the stuff that he was covering, more routes being open than actually were targeted, especially on curls. Like, he would be way too aggressive and he'd be going up the field and the guy would cut back and he would be 2 steps too slow. And Alontae talked about that, and he even pointed out the specific game, like where I kind of went, like I wrote a whole thing about it, and like that was a game he watched and was bothered by too. So I think if he cleans that stuff up, I think he can be really, really good. And the recognition of the errors, of the stuff that he needs to do better, being honest about it, being able to talk honestly about it without any type of ego, tells me that he's actually probably working on these things and addressing them, and they probably will get addressed. He does that and tackles better. I think he can be higher on the list.
If he has another season like he had last year, is he still in your top 20?
Well, he'd need to play more, So this is partly on potential, but yeah, I mean, like, he didn't play as much down the stretch, so I think he needs to win the job, have the job all year. I think if he plays the same way he did last year, like if his film looks exactly the same and there are these routes that he's leaving open, like his numbers are going to look different. Like, I think his numbers were better than some of the play, so I think that's a big thing he does need to clean up. So I guess to answer the question, if he plays exactly the same as last year, does he make the list? I don't know. I think that he would maybe get exposed a little bit more.
And then we go to 16.
Well, I have a question.
Oh.
You guys can keep this a secret, or I talked a lot about Rashid Shaheed. Are we waiting to hear your thoughts?
You're
on
waiting
Rashid
to hear.
Shaheed? All
You're
right.
waiting to hear
Yeah.
the thoughts.
But one more follow-up on Alontae Taylor. Hearing him talk about, reviewing his own game and studying his own tape, analyzing himself and what he needs to improve on, and I have very little doubt that he's somebody who's going to work on it. And my prediction will be he will be on this list and he'll be higher next year.
Yeah, same here. I think so too.
Number 16, now I'm flipping back. See, this shows you how hard a list is. Now I'm going back to a 30-year-old, Marcus May. It's so tough with Marcus May. Like, there's a professionalism, there's proven experience. When he was last fully healthy in 2020, he darn well could have been a Pro Bowler, 11 pass defenses, 88 tackles, 2 sacks. He doesn't have a single interception over the last 2 years, though. He has a total of 4 pass defenses the last couple years. He's turned into more of a strong safety as his highest tackles per game over the last couple years. I think he's developing that really good rapport with Tyrann Mathieu. He's one of the things that gives me confidence about this team. I think there'd be a drop-off if he wasn't in the field. He doesn't feel special. He doesn't feel ascending, but I feel good with him manning that role. He feels like a good, solid 16 to me.
Yeah, and just a preview, I'm not going to give away where they have him. You're going to have to watch at a later date. The guy on the other side of him, you guys both have him in the same spot. Can't say who it is, can't say what number it is. We'll get to year 16.
Well, I think I know who it is.
Yeah. You guys know. They don't know what number that person is at, though. So we'll leave that for them.
Yeah. Look, my 16 through 13, I think you could put these guys pretty much in any order here. It's just kind of like pick them at this point. So the first one I pulled out of the hat, I put Juwan Johnson at 16. A lot of the same things you said about Shaheed, ascending player. I think there's a lot more that he can get better at. And I think we're going to see some of that stuff. As he becomes a better tight end, too, I think he's going to get better. I think we got to see him block a little bit better than he did last season. It continues to be a focus of his. If he can add a little bit more to that and make a couple more contested catches, keep developing, I think he's someone that really has potential, top 10 potential.
And this is one of the things, I had a chance to look at their list. I have the full list here. One of the things that surprised me about you selecting Juwan Johnson at 16, I would have put him higher than another receiver that you have on that list.
Okay, all right. Well, I mean, I don't know
what is Juwan Johnson, you mentioned a little bit of needs to continue to prove it, but when you're looking at just if you're comparing tight ends and wide receivers like a Juwan Johnson and Rashid Shaheed, why is Rashid maybe higher than Juwan?
I think that there's a scenario where if things play out a certain way, like I could see Shaheed having like a 1,000-yard season soon. And that's someone that I like a lot. I think his return game stuff is a huge factor. So yeah, I put Rashid a little bit higher because I simply think Rashid's going to have a little bit of a better season this year.
Okay.
And I think he's primed for like maybe potentially big things.
Should I jump ahead? Let's keep talking Juwan right now because he's my number 14, which is going to make this episode. And for me, I actually thought there was a teardrop between 14 and 15 for me. Like Juwan there were 14 players that were no question going to be on this list no matter what. Juwan Johnson was going to be on my top 20 no matter what. The other 6 guys I had to kind of think about a little more. But he's 14th for a reason. He's never had more than 67 yards in a game. It feels like he's probably got some 100-yard games. Never had more than 67 yards in a game. And I think he's been a little more flash than substance. Over the last 2 years, 1 out of every 5 catches he's made has been a touchdown.
Wow.
1 out of 5, 11 touchdowns and 55 catches. And a lot of times that was coming in their hurry-up 2-minute drill when he had the luxury of being on the field when they were in hurry-up. Almost all of his big catches last year came in that scenario because he was coming off the field and blocking situations and stuff like that. But he started to develop that last year. He started to develop the body up the guy in the red zone. As he said, some of Michael Thomas's plays when Michael Thomas wasn't on the field. He's talked to us about how he's studying what Julian Edelman used to do on those choice routes because he knows Derek Carr likes. So a lot of this is projection that I think he's ready to take that next leap. We talked at the end of OTAs about how I thought he was one of the MVPs of OTAs, and I feel like we're seeing that growth already just in his role. He is a go-to guy for Derek Carr in these practices already. So I see a lot of growth for him. I would not be surprised at all if he's on the cusp of that like second tier of Pro Bowl alternates, not the top tier of NFC tight ends, but a legit top pass catching tight end in the league. I feel like he's on the cusp.
And we've talked about this before on the show, and I truly believe this too, and I think that's why I maybe put Juwan Johnson a little bit higher. I think Derek Carr is that tight end friendly quarterback. Now there is a whole lot of talent in the wide receiver room, which is going to compete with how well or how many yards or catches Juwan gets. But I think in those pressure moments in games, I think Derek Carr might lean on the fact that he's going to go to the big guy, especially if Michael Thomas is or is not available in those games. I think that's where Juwan Johnson will get more attention on the field.
It's a chicken or the egg thing, too. Derek Carr can throw the hell out of the ball. And if Juwan Johnson's actually that good at his job this year, and if Mike Thomas is actually on the field, Shaheed's going to get better looks on the outside, and there's going to be bombs away. You can't cover everybody, so it's going to be fascinating to kind of see how the distribution goes. But I think you can go either way with them. I think it's kind of guessing at both. But as Mike said, Shaheed was on pace for a 1,000-yard season, and if you had isolated the last 4 weeks of last year, and you knew nothing about the NFL, you knew nothing about the players, and you just watched them play, and you said which one of these guys was a first-round pick, Chris Olave or Rashid Shaheed, I'm not sure that everybody watching is picking Olave. It would have probably been a split opinion. I thought he looked that good late in the year, and he wasn't out there in the last practice, so there's probably some recency bias on the MVP stuff, but if we had done that after the second OTA, everybody in this room would have picked Rashid Shaheed.
Well, one of the things that we're not talking about, too, is the way the NFL is going this year. It is a running back friendly and a league, and the fact that you look at all the running backs that got selected in this year's draft, there's Alvin Kamara in the room, there's Jamal Williams, and their new draft pick Kendre Miller. So how do you even that out and who's going to be getting the ball more? Of course, the wide receivers will probably have a little bit of an edge, but these are pass-catching running backs that they haven't. So we'll see how that shakes out, too, and plays into it.
There's a lot of touches that need to be distributed. It's a good problem to have.
It is really
a very good problem to have.
And very specifically, Juwan Johnson becomes a lot more important if Michael Thomas isn't on the field. So hopefully he doesn't need to be that important for the Saints, because we all want to see Mike Thomas on the field. So Rashid Shaheed is coming in a later episode.
Oh, okay. Not today.
All right, well, I only have one more person to discuss, and it's the hardest guy on this list. I wonder if that means he's not going to be on Nick's list at all. I put Jameis Winston at 15. He theoretically shouldn't play at all this year, so he could be outside of the top 20. But, a year ago we supported their choice to make Jameis Winston their starting quarterback, and if you're the starting quarterbacks are so outsized in their importance. If Jameis Winston was going to start 17 games this year, he could be in the top 10, he could be in the top 12. Does he not belong in the top 20 because his role is scheduled to be a backup quarterback? It's just really tough. Jameis Winston versus Marcus May. You know what I mean? That's choices I'm making on this list or whatever. But he was the last of that other tier of guys who could be on the list, could not be on the list. But, it's a guy who's thrown 30 touchdowns. It's a guy who's thrown for 5,000 yards. It's a guy who had his career high 102.8 passer rating in that small sample size in 2021 before injuries took him over, and it didn't happen for him last year. I don't know where to put Jameis Winston on this list. If we were doing it together and you said, no, let's not put him in our top 20, that would be fine. But, quarterbacks get bonuses.
And if you miss Nick's reaction, I think it's pretty telling. I'll let you take it over, but I did star that when you sent your list, because I don't know if Jameis Winston is in my top 20, but it's interesting. God forbid anything happens this year and he comes out, and I think...
Well, is he? Answer the question. Is he in your top 20?
Well, in OTAs, I think the three of us can all agree he's looked really good in the 3 windows that we've seen him, and if he continues to get healthier...
a lot about ceilings on this list. His ceiling means more than anyone else's ceiling, but we've seen his floor too.
If you're asking me to put Jameis Winston above Cesar Ruiz, probably.
I know. It's not. It's not tough to me. I'll let you guys have it. It's not an argument I want to get into, but it's.
No, I want to hear it.
Well, we're talking. I don't want to bash Jameis, but the league told us what his ceiling is. What are we talking about? People that determine the stuff and put value on it told us. The Saints aren't starting him. He's not a top 20 player.
Yeah, and I think that's where you get into these heated arguments that we see on national TV too. This is a topic that I guess we've kind of been on the line of maybe the hopeful, because we just see these little glimpses, and maybe I'm holding too much onto those little glimpses and seeing what could be and getting into the storylines of he's an injury away or things like that. But you are right. When you do look at, if you take off the blinders of the last few years and go back to Tampa Bay, he's not a top 20 quarterback. But and that's where we're looking at potential maybe too much.
It's tough with quarterbacks.
That's why, yeah.
It's tough with quarterbacks because last year Andy Dalton would not have been on my preseason top 20.
Absolutely not.
He would have been on my postseason top 20.
Sure, but I mean, like we're projecting.
It's all about opportunity.
We're projecting. The purpose of the list is projecting for the 2023 season. So are we projecting a Derek Carr injury? Like
that's why a list like this is so hard.
I don't even understand how he
because only one gets to play at a time. Yeah, but if for some reason Derek Carr wasn't going to play this season and Jameis was going to start in week 1, I think I think he deserves mention on the list of other guys who could also, Bradley Roby, Marcus May, other guys who could get beat out and lose their job. And unfortunately, that's about where we are on this list. There's, like I said, my top 14, ironclad, were going to be in my top 20. Everyone else, I was like, I don't know. I don't know where to put them.
And to be fair, both guys have Derek Carr on this list. It's not saying that because Jameis is at 15 that, something's going to happen or that Derek Carr.
Yeah,
it's not comparing that. I think and that's where you get into like kind of the loose parameters of a top 20 is just on numbers and playing ability, or if he while he's available but not playing, and if he does get those few games, God forbid an injury happens, a trade, who knows?
Yeah.
The train that Jameis Winston should have been playing a lot more last year.
Yeah, no, they should have benched Andy Dalton and stuff if he was healthy, but apparently he wasn't.
It's not worth fighting over, but it's just like, where do you put Jameis Winston on a list like this?
Yeah,
this proves how hard it is. I
mean, I don't think he has a place. Like, I'm not putting in the backup cornerback. I'm not putting in the backup center. I don't have Nick Saldiveri on my list. Like. These guys were projecting what they're going to do. Like, I'm projecting Rashid Shaheed to have 700 yards.
Yeah.
I'm projecting Jawan Johnson to have 600-700 yards. Like, those are tangible contributions. Like, Jameis should have zeros across the board if everything goes right this season.
It's fair.
Well, that's why we have these lists. We're going to agree to disagree on things. Let's go to 14.
14?
No, we don't. We haven't heard Nick's 15 yet.
Oh, 15. Oh. I jumped ahead.
My 15 was the NFL rusher in touchdowns last year. So, I mean, I'm going with guys that are going to do things this season. Look, he's not going to have those kind of numbers, but I think Jamal Williams is going to have a massive impact on the season. And if we're, projecting Alvin's suspension, he probably should even be higher on the list because he's going to have a bigger role earlier in the season. So, I think he's going to fit in really well. We talked about it on the last show, just the opportunity he has in these practices. Looks like he's taking advantage of it just to build rapport with Derek Carr. And he was kind of like the first guy we saw Carr kind of pull over, hey, do it this way, go back, correct stuff. So I think there's going to be some decent chemistry there. And look, I mean, if we're being real about it, new quarterback, new players, I think Alvin's going to show up and hit the ground running. But having this time with someone to get that time on task is something that I think is invaluable. And I think it's going to bode well for Williams.
Yeah, I like Jamal Williams there. And that, too, depending on what happens this season. Of course, this is just like a preseason projection, but he could climb up that list depending on what happens with that suspension, how long it goes, and who is Alvin Kamara going to be this year? Is he going to be the Alvin Kamara of last year where, unfortunately, he's having to do all the work, and because of that, the production isn't as exciting as we saw in 2019? Or is he 2019 Alvin Kamara? Well, I mean, that's something that we'll have to see.
Yeah, it's going to be.
He'll be on my list to come.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I
agree with everything you're saying. He's not far away on my list.
Yeah.
All right.
Stay tuned in next episode for more Jamal Williams talk.
All right. Are we good to move to 14?
Yeah.
Oh, you already gave up your 14?
Yeah, mine was Jawan Johnson.
I got Marcus May here. And I think I disagreed with you feel like he hit his ceiling? I think there's more ceiling. He had an injured Achilles last year. I don't think we ever really saw Marcus May full strength altogether. I think before that injury, he was someone that I thought was one of the better young safeties in the NFL. And there was a point where I was looking at him should they replace Marcus Williams with him before they actually did it? So I think there's a chance for him to tap back into that. I think him and Tyron playing together, knowing how to talk to one another, just having chemistry, knowing how the corners play, being able to play to their strengths. I think getting Marshawn Lattimore back on the field will make Marcus May better at his job as well as Tyron. There might be some cheap picks, some more playmaking opportunities. You get that side locked down, you can roam and read the field more. I think that there is a lot of meat on the bone, and I think he's going to be a better player than he was last year.
I think, too, when you mentioned it with Marcus Williams, maybe that's why people didn't value Marcus May. It's because of the shoes he was replacing, right? But Marcus May, I agree with you. Injuries played a big factor. The arrest played a factor, I think, mentally. These are humans.
That's a good point.
These are humans that when something like that happens, that is going to affect your everyday life.
Yes.
And just having to deal with that and it's a big burden. It's like an injury. And so he has the injury, he has that. Now he has a full offseason with Tyrann Mathieu. He did not have that last offseason. We've continued to hear from Marcus May and Tyrann Mathieu and the fact that their chemistry is growing. They're able to move and not necessarily have to communicate as much as they did last year. So his ceiling is high.
Absolutely. He absolutely agree that there's probably more than what we saw in his first year with the Saints.
Yeah. All right, so we got our top 20. You want to roll it through, roll it back? Or I'm sorry, your top 20 from 20 to 14.
My first 7 of the top 20.
First 7. So
Ryan Bresee, JT Gray, Cesar Ruiz, Alante Taylor, Juwan Johnson, Jamal Williams, Marcus May.
Bradley Roby, Cesar Ruiz on both lists, Alante Taylor, both lists, Rashid Shaheed. I've way undervalued Rashid Shaheed compared to Nick. Marcus May, very similar, 16 for me, 14 for Nick. 15, Jameis Winston, our biggest disagreement. I don't stand by it. I don't know where to put a quarterback on a list like this.
Well, I get it,
And
I guess.
Yeah.
And I will say, now that we have...
He would have talked, if this was a joint NOF list, he would have talked me into not putting him on those lists.
I know,
I tell you, I was looking at that and I was like, we were comparing JT Gray and Jameis Winston. It's an impossible task.
This was meant to be raw reaction. That's why you guys didn't see each other's lists. And I think this is where, because I kind of leaned on your side, maybe this is where we kind of fell off the rule list. And we fell into he could be this instead of what are they going to do in 2023? And that's, I think, where you're like, well, what are you doing? This is like a top 20
if you're gonna
for 2023.
If you have to acknowledge him on the list, 20.
Okay.
20.
That's fine.
Yeah, if you're going to put him on the list, it's like, I got Jameis here because I think Jameis is better than the Saints think he is, and I'm gonna acknowledge him at 20. But over players that are going to play,
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, what if we were putting a NOF grade on these players? What if we were saying this player is an 89.3? I'm trying to give Jameis a grade. I'm not predicting his final stat line for this season. I'm saying, where is he right now in his career? Mm-hmm. If there's an expansion draft and people are getting to pick players off this team, I think they'd take Jameis over JT Gray. I would.
When you view it that way, is it different?
He's a quarterback. Yeah.
Okay. That's why I'm saying that's what makes a backup quarterback almost impossible to grade on a list like this.
So the parameters were different.
I do agree that I probably should have put Rashid Shaheed and Alante Taylor over him, because those are the guys who are getting me very excited for this season.
Yeah. All right. Well, fair enough. And you gave your 14?
Juwan Johnson.
Somebody
we're both very excited.
Yes. So we will give you 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, and 7 next time around?
Yep.
Guys, it gets dicey. Let me take one last look at both of their lists here.
We've got to have almost all of the exact same players.
So they're
just in a different order.
Yes. So they're similar. And like I said, 7 is the same. After that, though, so one of Nick's top 13 is not... Well, he's in your top 13, but we'll get to him in the 3rd episode of this. Right. So it's going to be interesting.
All right.
I like it. I like bringing the heat from both sides. Look, this is what it's about. We're not supposed to agree on everything, but we hope you guys enjoyed it, and be sure to tune in to the next edition of their top 20. We'll have that for you guys, and looking forward to it. We'll see you next time.